Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Femi again, and I am co-hosting with Josh, and I am not liking the too early sunsets right now at this point of the year.
There's two of them?
The early sunset. The early sun. This is important of like being able to make sure I'm communicating clearly too. The sun setting too early at this point of the year.
Oh, I was like, gosh, we got another sun to deal about. Jeez. This is Josh, and I am sorting through my confusion.
So, for those of you who have listened to other episodes and may have jumped into this one, we normally talk about in our podcast movies and different forms of media where we're talking through giving a summary of it, talking about the message of it, audience, rethinking it, bringing in Bible passages. And we're in a series right now where we're taking a couple episodes to talk about why we care about this stuff and how you can do it too. One of the things we just talked about was how you can build a base using the Bible to reference as a safe point, as a home base, as a bank to pull from when you're engaging in culture. And one of our main audiences is of parents who are making that, who have the kids who are making that transition from elementary school age to middle school, high school age, where Christian media for kids, it sort of just becomes too juvenile for them and they want to engage with things, or they get into the real world and they're like, what is going on? And how you as a parent navigate engaging them with media. And we hope to have a really big conversation about how you can do that with some more clinical professionals. But as we're building up to that, we wanted to share some things about building trust that both Josh and I have realized are important for us, both because we have to build trust with our wives since we are both married. I have to build trust with some kids. Josh had to build trust as a teacher with a bunch of different other people's kids and all of their emotions and hormones. Oh, yeah. And doing it with coworkers. But like, what is it to build trust with people who are learning from you and pointing to you? So even if you have a Bible base, you're trying to contextualize something that you've seen or relate to something you've seen, how do you build trust so that people actually listen to you? So we're going to talk about that for this episode. And I'll kick it off with a question again to Josh of what's your experience? Let's maybe give us a positive experience of somebody who builds trust with you really well. Some missteps somebody in your life who you care about might have done in you trusting them. And then some things you were like, these are really critical for me when I want to build trust for me to hold on to remember.
So I will go to the distrust first. So both of these stories are actually about some teachers I had. So one in middle school, one in high school. So a lot of distrust happened. I had a specific teacher when I was in middle school who every now and then I think it was like a weird time where there was just a lot of
middle school camp
media. Dude, for everybody involved, like teachers, kids, man, dude, it's a ride. But I think we were in a season of culture where there was just a lot of panic around media specifically. So, kids and shooting games, and does that lead to these shootings that are happening or just violence in general? Like, now these cartoons, they're too loud, they're too cartoony, like it's rotting our kids' brains. What do we do? And this teacher would often be very, very negative and very vocal to us as students about like how dangerous and damaging these things were. And he was just kind of like a very intense guy. And I remember there was actually a class period where this wasn't out of conviction, this was out of fear, but I ended up actually going home after he had done one of these kind of like rants to our classroom. And I just had it in my little, like, I don't want to make people mad as a middle school kid heart to be like, okay, I'm going to like go through all of our games and our media and I'm going to kind of like filter stuff out. So anything that I could see or label as a middle school kid as like too violent, we're going to like get rid of. So I mean, this is in the age where like I'm probably more mad about all of the games that I wish I still owned because of like giving them away because of how valuable they are and how much I love them. But I got rid of them. Like we sold them to GameStop, and I'm sure Zach and I like bought something else, or we like tied some of the money, or like we did something with it. But I just remember being so scared by this person's reaction, not the media itself, but like the reaction it was eliciting from this other person, that I like did something about my media habits, but it wasn't from a place of actually trying to be a healthy critical thinker. It was from appeasing someone's intense personality. Later, when I was in high school, I had a teacher who I really, really gelled with. I only had him 1 year. His name was Mr. Bryan. So shout out to Mr. Bryan. He was our current events. He was our current events and history teacher. And he, to me, was like the exact opposite. He was really, he taught in the Middle East. He had a crazy story of being, I want to say it was with YWAM, which was how he got into teaching. But like he was teaching, and because of his where he was living and teaching, he had students who their parents were, or like dads were leaders in like Hamas and stuff. Like it was intense. So it was like a faith-based thing that he was doing. But so he just was like a very grounded, very like, you know, and senior year was at the height of a lot of tension with like the Middle East, the Arab Spring, all sorts of stuff. And his conversations with us were, yes, about like games and stuff. And he would often be like, oh, do you guys play this still? Do you do this? Like, oh, I remember Halo. Like it was just there was this down to earthness, but there was also the side in the other parts of life that he was challenging us to think really critically about. And it was just such a polar opposite experience that I had, where I had this one person who is trying to get me to change my thoughts and behaviors based out of fear, and then someone who was actually trying to encourage me to change those patterns out of just thinking differently and actually looking at what I was seeing and thinking about what I was seeing and what other people were saying about what I was seeing. So the trust was built because even though I knew my teacher, Mr. Bryan, had his own opinions, had his own perspectives on things, he was trying to draw out of me more of what I thought, and for the sake not to eventually come to the same conclusion as him, but to build the muscle of thinking. Like that was his end goal. The distrust from my other teacher came from him trying to bend and break us to his point of view. And so as I've gotten older, I've, you know, and I, again, thinking back, I've noticed that when I start to be around people or hear people where it sounds like you're trying to crack my perspective to bend to yours, I get very prickly really fast. So that's kind of my like, you know, little like spidey sense, I guess. And I also can kind of tell on the opposite, where like when someone is like, okay, I have my opinions and I'm going to share them, but I'm actually also really curious, like, what do you think about this? And how do you think about it? You know, like there's a different sort of engagement from those two places. So, yeah, so those are kind of my critical stories.
Yeah. I'll do stories and then we can do the advice. But I think that I'm trying to think of somebody who I distrusted, like actually distrusted. And there's only one teacher who sort of just insulted me. And the rest of my teachers, not so much. But the two that could get closer, one teacher, she could put me into the special education program for gifted kids. She just didn't like my behavior in class, which justified. And then the other person just sort of did not believe that I had achieved mathematically the education that I had before they were my educator. And because I skipped steps, like gave me almost a failing grade on like the first test. And there were only like 3 other chances I had to like try to bring up my grade, my very first grade for this institution, to an A. And I went from the lowest grade in the class to the highest. And I like sort of was really petty, tried to prove them wrong. And then they gave me an award, and it wasn't most improved, although that was mathematically true. And it wasn't most outstanding, although I had the highest grade. It was most inquisitive performance is what they wanted to get. And just sort of like a jab at me. All the other teachers who I could bring up and all the other adults who I could bring up, what they cared about was my commitment to my stated goal for their role in my life. So give a couple examples. That 3rd grade teacher, she wanted me to be and she was one of my only black teachers. And I am black for those of you who do not see me. But like, she was one of the only black teachers that I had, and she wanted me to be seen and treated respectfully. Shout out Miss Sherelle Mayford Jackson. Another teacher, Randall Shadoan, he had a stroke and came back to school when I was in 5th grade. He wasn't my homeroom teacher, but I remember going to the bathroom and seeing him with his cane, like clean up the wall of the bathroom that somebody else had done graffiti on. And like he was known as this hard-nosed teacher, but he like cared about us as kids. My geometry and algebra teacher in middle school, one of my other few black teachers, but she wanted us to, she would have some of those like off conversations with me like, hey, people aren't going to see you like they see some of your classmates. Like you're going to have to do that. But she wanted me to be a successful student. She wanted me to be a success. Coaches that I had, they were aligned to the goals that I had stated. And anytime they were hard on me, it was because I was not meeting my stated goal. It was not because they wanted to just be hard on me. If you like, you want to win a soccer championship, you want to be a champion, like you got to run. You got to have this. It's not just because I see a college coach doing this to his player, so we're just going to make you do it. Anyway, it's, you're not conditioned, and I was not. And you need the conditioning to be able to do the things at the right level. And so I think that's something that as we transition into the conversation, last little bit. Anytime I butted heads with my parents, that was probably the biggest thing. Their goals versus my goals. Not a common goal and me misstepping, but when they were trying to, like you said, switch my goals to their goals. And so when we're talking about goals and purposes, it's really important as you are trying to build trust to make sure, do you know the goal of your children or the children you are in charge of? Is their goal to get straight A's? If their goal is not to get straight A's, then why is that the target you're testing? And sorry, public school teachers, it's because you legally have to. But like, but really, like, what's the purpose? Yeah. I want you to know this for this reason. I want you to know who Charlemagne is so you can see the destruction of people in power and the assignment of people in power. Not just so you can go, and Charlemagne, like I'm not, that's what, we're not just teaching you history for one-upsmanship. We're teaching you history just like we teach you the Bible base, so you can see these missteps. Getting into steps before we run out of time. Like, what are some of the things that you're like, okay, these are things I hold on to if I'm trying to build trust with someone under me in my professional position or somebody in church who's like looking up to me for whatever reason?
Yeah. I'm going to try and be succinct. I have a lot of caveats or things I want to go on to, but I would say first, I'm going to list them, and then if I forget them, maybe you can remind me. So the first I would say is prioritize, especially if this is someone that you're hoping to train up, equip, challenge. Prioritize inquisitiveness and being curious. The second thing I would say is be confident, intentional, and willing to be challenged in your own perspectives and conclusions. And then the last tip I would say is pursue connection beyond sameness. So I'll kind of start breaking those down. Thanks for typing them out. Yeah. So the first, I would say prioritizing inquisitiveness. So as a high school teacher, one of the things that I experienced that built relationships with students deeply the fastest and the most fruitfully was being inquisitive and asking questions, and specifically questions that were beyond the surface, and sometimes questions that were not easy to answer. There's more I want to say about, like, you know, kind of how you do that, how you frame it, things like that. But ultimately, I think our students and our young people, especially as they get into middle and high school, they're starting to form opinions. And I think that's good. And I think in a lot of ways we try to squash that because it's like, well, you don't know anything. You're a kid, you know, you haven't experienced anything. But I think that's actually the perfect avenue for us as adults or as mentors in any capacity to draw them out to understand really what they think, they see, and they feel, to affirm what aligns with scripture, as we keep saying is kind of our base, aligns with the truth of how life goes, you know, and just the different challenges that we might face. And then also to look for those things where it's like, hey boss, like, okay, like you got this. I like where you're going with this, but like, I'm going to challenge you on this part of it. Like, tell me more again, but you keep leaning into the acquisitiveness and you draw versus like jam. So draw versus jam. That's my first thing. with the confidence and intentionality in sharing your perspective, that's something that I learned a couple years into teaching, is that I think there is a narrative, and I saw it a little bit play out with my wife, who was in higher education and worked at a Madison public school, is there's a hesitancy to tell adults that they can have opinions and that they can have them confidently, whatever they are. And I would disagree to the level that I think it's important for you to be confident in your opinion, but that your opinion is deeply rooted in a thought process, or at least a level of understanding about something that you can communicate to someone else to almost see your work. And I think that's something that builds distrust and does the opposite effect. Is when you have a deeply seated opinion, you need to get straight A's, and your kid goes, why? And you say, because it's important. And that's it. Like, that's where your opinion and your confidence ends. Like, trust destroyed. They, with kids' experience and the things that they're exposed to, you can't give short, unexplored answers anymore. That was my experience as a high school teacher. So, and being willing to, like, for you and I, Femi, like, there are jobs and careers and different things, and even just like different ways to live, flourishing and non-flourishing, that didn't exist when we were in high school, and didn't even exist within the last like 3 or 4 years. And now, like, those things have come up. And so for us to blanket say, oh, it is perfectly good and every single kid in high school should go this direction, or should have this kind of life, or should watch this kind of movie and not watch this kind of movie, and listen to this and not this. If that's not explored or explainable to a younger mind, they're tuning out. Like, they don't have time for that. And then the last thing is, I think, and this is just a human condition thing, no matter where your spiritual background is from, but my goal as an educator when I was building relationships with students was not to be buddy. I think of the 30 Rock Steve Buscemi, like, hello, my fellow kids, like that kind of meme. That's not what we're talking about when we say pursue connection. It's more, do your students, do your mentees, do your kids know you enough that they kind of know, like, oh, my dad likes this kind of thing and he's into this, or my mom really likes this, or whatever. And even though they know those differences about you, they are still connected to you in some way. And that, I think, is where a lot of this about movies and exploring narratives together can be really powerful, because even if you say, watch a movie that isn't in the genre that one of your kids likes or doesn't like, or, you're like, I don't want to watch the next Sonic movie, please God, don't make me do it, but like, for the sake of your kids, you're not pursuing sameness, you're pursuing connection through something that they like. And even if you're approaching it with the things that you care about and you think about and you value, you don't have to become a Sonic fan, right? Like, to be connected to your kid, but you can still understand it in your own mature perspective in a way that helps your kids see, like, oh, like, my parents kind of aren't wigged out by this, or like, they don't make me feel bad for liking this thing or being into it. So, yeah,
like, in a similar note, I was talking about how men and women talk about our emotions, and this is a generalization, so don't come from my throat, please, everybody who's listening.
I hear everyone just like wringing their hands right now.
Just like getting all their knives and
they're ready,
pitchforks ready. A lot of times women will describe a situation and expect the empathy for a man to understand the feeling. And a man will hear the description of the situation and be like, yes, so that happened. But they didn't hear an emotional word. They didn't hear anger, frustration. I'm nervous. I'm anxious. I'm like, so we're just sort of like, okay, so you were driving in the street and a biker crossed in front of you and flicked you off. And you did what? Were you angry? Were you sad? Were like, what? I don't know how you felt about that. Like, and so, and that has not happened to my wife. But when I am mad or when I am emotional, I realize I don't describe my feelings either. But it's because the things that I am worried about are threats or opportunities for my family. I'm excited if something is an opportunity for my family. If it's a normal thing, whatever. If it's a threat to my family, I want to talk about the threat. Your feelings when you're connected to somebody help you translate things like that better. And you have to pursue it to know for somebody who's really hormonal. And so as a parent, like for me with 3 little kids at home right now, I remember that they need to see me mostly as unflappable. So even if I view something said as a threat, I have to like pause. Like my son like said something that made me emotional last night of, Dad, I want to go be with God. And like I had 50 billion thoughts in like 2 seconds of like, oh my gosh, does he not want to be alive anymore? Does he want to go? He wants to go to heaven. Does he know what that means? And so I was like, whoa, slow down. What do you mean, bud? What do you mean?
Curiosity. There you go. Love it.
Like,
yeah.
And that's why that's also my first step, which is ask curious questions about what they're saying, their interest in their opinion. Not all the time. Like, I don't want to eat rice. Why don't you want to eat rice? Like, nah, like we have rice for dinner. Like, what's going on? Like, what's the deal? But also, it's a way to show your ignorance and be humble. I don't know everything. I don't know exactly what you mean when you describe a situation to me. And that connection is a form of self-expression. Like they want you to, people want to be known and seen. So being honest with what they see, being honest with what they see you watch and consume and what you're not going to let them watch and consume, letting them know that that's not for this time is really important. Sharing your scars when something is off limits. Hey, the reason you can't watch this at your age is because I watched this when I was your age and it did this damage. And I don't want to risk that doing damage to you. So it's just a line that I have. As you get older, we can talk about it, or we can talk more about what I've been through if you want to, as all kids want to. Talk about the depths of your parents' past to earn the right to watch it. Okay, never mind. It's not worth it. I'll just wait. And the why helps them when they see you as a scarred person. Another example of this for adults is when you hear an older teacher talk about how they screwed up for the first 5 years of teaching, and then they give you advice, it's much different from when they like bark at you your first day on the job. I'm thinking of Abbott Elementary, nothing with Josh or nothing with Glory. But because when you know what people have been through, it's easier to go, okay, they're here for my goals. Be honest about wounds that you're still working with. You don't have to share everything. But like, hey, I'm still healing from this and I'm apologizing because of this and that. It helps build you as a human in their eyes. And then as we talked about with our scars, like, man, the importance of me knowing somebody is for me is so huge. It is the biggest thing that my wife and I, when we're talking, makes me feel like I can run through a brick wall. If I know she has no question, she's like not doubting me at all about a thing. Not that she's sort of like, I support you, but I'm scared. Like that's different from we've talked about this enough, run through a brick wall. Like, yes, I'm here. Right. That would make me jump out of like, a 2-story building.
Tom Cruise style, right?
Run through a brick wall because, and when you're a child and there's so many people telling you what you can and can't do, rightfully so, to know that the trusted adults in your life are like, what do you want to do? Explain it to me. I'm willing to listen. And I'm this person who's been through a bunch of stuff too. It makes a kid feel like they can run through a brick wall. Hey, like the reason I want you to get A's is because I know that somebody who doesn't know you like I know you can't see the work or the value or the creativity or the passion you have. All they have is this paper application. Now, if you really want that institution to sign off on you, you have to get in. But to get in, you have to impress the person whose job it is to look at everybody else who's applying. And I want you to get straight A's because I know that just puts you a little bit closer to get to that institution. And if you want them to give you a stamp of approval, you can't. Now, because I'm for your goals and I know your goals don't need that institution, if you don't want to get straight A's, that could be okay, but you still need to develop these skills and earn the respect of some of these teachers so they can write letters of recommendation to this other thing that's not college. If you don't like explaining to the kid why you want them to get their goals. I want you to win. I want you to win well. And there's 50 billion options for you to win. Let me help you. Right? It's so much more helpful for them to trust you in hard times. And I have a hard stop in a few minutes, so I'm going to watch the time.
Yeah.
But I want to tell a story like good. This shouts out respect to both of our dads. Like in one of our earlier episodes, they both came on and we're like, we're proud of you. And we love you. But
yep.
I knew a lot of people respected my dad growing up as a professor because he's a professor. But I did not realize, like in his office hours, how many people came to him with like personal life questions. And it's not like all the time, but I just remember like, oh, whatever, and how he carried himself. And my mom with some women at church, same thing of like, when you carry yourself a certain way, people do want to ask you for things that are not like your bread and butter questions. If nobody's asking you those questions, if your kids aren't asking you those questions, they're asking somebody. And I hope they're not the people who are calling into a radio show talking about deep emotional things, hoping the DJ is going to be like, I got the answer, right?
Yeah.
You don't want them going on reality TV shows. You want them talking at with their friends at coffee about their relationship life.
This is Dirty Mike. You got get what you got, Tommy.
Exactly, right?
I'm going through something.
I want my daughter to like talk to like good friends she has who she also trusts, who I know them and their parents, and like, yeah, go talk to them. You know, they might have a different perspective, but I trust them. They trust me. I want my kids' friends to come and ask me for help. I want my friends to ask their friends' parents for some help sometimes, so they can see their parents and me agree. Like as they get like, but building trust is so important. Being stable is so important, but being honest and trustworthy, like I got to be in their corner. You know, just as much I want my wife to know that I'm in her corner. I'm behind her and support her in so many things, as long as they're like within God's rule for her life and what she's supposed to be going for. I want her to win. I just want her to win. You know, I don't want her to make a mistake out of being emotional or like being cold to somebody. You know, like we want people we care about to win, to really, really win, and do it as Christians in the way that God really wants them to do. And there's still within his realm, like so many ways to do it. But now I'm blabbing.
No, it's all good.
Any closing thoughts from you, Josh, on just like, again, this idea of building trust with people and how that helps with engaging in conversations about media, the Bible, contextualization?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I want to say is that people often in business, I think, use terms like it takes, 500 interactions to build trust and it takes one to lose it all. I, from my teaching experience, if that's anything, I deeply disagree with that if you handle that one situation very well in your mistake. So when we talk about all this stuff of building trust, I want to be very direct with any parents or, again, adults in the lives of young people listening. It's not about being perfect, and it's not about having the exact perfect question or the answer. Like, you're human, you're going to mess up, you're going to break trust. There's going to be an opinion that you give a little too harshly at the wrong time, whatever. The thing that matters that I've seen over and over and over again, especially like I have some stories of times that like I really messed up teaching wise. The thing that mattered the most was me owning it, not sheepishly, but being like, guys, how I reacted in that situation, not okay. And I'm not going to do that again. And then sticking to that, and then finding ways to communicate through my actions in the future and through my other words and interactions that I am sticking to what I said and I'm changing. And so, so trust, yes, is about all these things, questions, confidence in what you think, and, pursuing connection, but it's also in having humble reactions to when things don't go how you envisioned. And that can almost speak more than some of those sometimes. So don't be afraid about being perfect. Just be afraid about, don't be afraid about anything. Don't
pursue the person.
And pursue the person. Yeah. And sometimes that means owning a mistake. Sometimes that means drawing out something that you see that they don't. Sometimes that's just laughing over a really stupid movie. There's a lot of ways. Just let the trust drops fall in the bucket as they come.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate it. We already have a sign off recording, so I ain't got to do any of that.
Yes,
but
sir.
We really appreciate you all listening and hope that you're building your Bible base. You're working on trust as you're engaging with all the people who have so many questions and stress in this world. But love everybody. Peace.
Peace.
This episode was produced by Josh Erickson, Josh Cook, and Femi Shokoya, and edited by Josh Erickson. Our social media producer is Colton Mefford. We are currently self-supported. You can check out short stories, merch, and highlighted creators at parablearrows.com. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Parable Arrows or support us on Patreon. Thank you for listening to the Parable Arrows podcast. Think, move in faithfulness, and trust God. Pull back, aim high, let it fly.